everybody. This is Scott Janneron for MoreEV.com. Today I'm going to do a video, an intro video over the Combonator, and basically I'm just going to try to touch base on as much of its components as I can. I'm going to try to keep the video around 30 minutes long, so the extent to which I can explain the practical, application of some of the options I may not be able to get to. So, if you go to YouTube, there's a 7-part video series done by the creator of the video if you need more specifics. And at Combonator.com and his blog, he has some stuff about the updated version, which is this version. So if you feel a little bit lost or confused by the end of the video on a particular topic, he covers all of it in those. But that being said, I'll do my best to cover everything I can and keep it simple and explain, some of the benefits of this program and what it does, how to use it. So, right now, this is the Combonator here. It's just kind of a grid of all of the possible Texas Hold'em hands you could be dealt. So, I'm just going to start with how they're divided here. All these pink ones here are all going to be suited hands. So all the ones that I'm turning yellow right now are all suited hands. You can clear the board by hitting clear. You can select all by hitting all. If you want to select a certain piece and then see the inverse of that, it'll just click invert. So this green part on the bottom here is all the off-suited hands, and this diagonal section down the middle is all pocket pairs. Now this right here is kind of it's just kind of a tab that you can pull from left to right, and as you do, this number in this box will change, and what this number represents is the percentile of the hands you've selected from 1 to 100. So at this current point, we've selected the top 27.5% of hands. Now, you can manually type in, say 15, like that. It'll give you the top 15% hands. You can do something like in between 15 and 30% of hands. These are the hands that are going to lie in value anywhere from the 15th percentile to the 30th percentile. And these are the modes that this entire calculator is used in. I'm not going to go into the differences. We're using 4-way equity poker stove. There's going to be slight differences in the way that the hands are ranked because these may take into account different formats and some game theory options we're not going to talk about. So we'll clear all that. So you can manually type it in. You can hit this up button and it'll show you the percentage. So you start from 0 going up. It's going to put all aces, kings, all these other pairs, high suited connectors at the top. If you click line here, you can sort of drag and pick big blocks of stuff, or from side to side, or whatever you're looking for. You can get it in lines. So that's how the line works. Clear that. Diagonal, you just be able to pick out diagonal, parts, however you might want to. Pairs are this way. This can be suited connectors through here. So suited connectors maybe something in there. Suited gap or connecting gap or offsuit connectors on the other side. So that's just how the diagonal works. And then cross, if you want to say get a hand to be useful in the post-flop mode, we're not there yet, we're in pre-flop mode. But if you want to get a hand with like all 9s in it or something like that, you can click here and you're going to get all the hands with 9 in them. So that would be good if you want to evaluate how strong your hand is in the post-flop mode against an opponent's range of hands or a specific hand that you've given your opponent. So the Combonator in general is used for you to either compare a specific hand that you've put your opponent on versus a range of hands that you may hold, or the flip of that. You may put your opponent on a range of hands. It could be post-flop or pre-flop, and then you're going to have whatever hand you're dealt, and you're going to compare the board texture if you want to have it with what you perceive your opponent's range to be against whatever hand you have. So we'll get to that in a minute. You can also do pre-flop, comparisons in equity. So let's say that I'm playing a guy that, playing Nolan at Hold'em, and he plays 37% of hands. So, we're assuming he plays the top 37% of those hands. And we'll just, in order to save this, we're going to save this as a range. We're going to go to save pre-flop ranges. We're going to right-click it. Now, all these other ones in here are just ones that the creator made just for reference. So just added that. Just added something that I didn't want to, but if we click any of these, the off, suited gappers, offsuit gappers, suited connectors, and stuff like that. Top percentage of hands, top 12% of hands, top 30% of hands, top 30. You just double click it, it'll pull them up like that. But we're going to say that our opponent plays, what would we have, 36.7% of hands. So that's what his range is going to look like. So we can right click up here on save pre-flop range. We're going to add new range. And we'll call this 36.7, and it'll be down there. So then we'll clear this, and I don't know. And if you don't want to be in cross, line, or diagonal, just click. If it's already illuminated red, just click it again. You'll go back to single box selections. And you clear. So we're gonna compare that with I don't know, someone who plays, let's say 28% of hands. And then save this as 28. And then we can toggle this output here. So player 1, we can just include that. Now for player 2, player 1, we will give 28. So then we can see here that player 1 versus player 2, player 2 who plays 28% of hands, his range of hands is going to have a 52.3% edge over player 1's selected pre-flop range. So he's going to be a slight underdog in the hands he's picking. So another way, we can just remove this whole range here. Click back up to player 1, and we can pretend we're player 2, and we'll say, okay, we have, say we'll right click any of these hands on this right here. So hand versus an equity it has versus player 1's range here. So ace has an 84.81% chance of winning against this range over the long run. So if we want to choose any one of these hands as our own, we say, alright, let's pick ace queen offsuit, we'll set other player to this hand. Alright, and then we'll see what that hand has in equity against this entire range. It's a 2-to-1 favorite over this entire range. So we could add, let's say, ace queen, king, and we'll say randomly just pocket sevens. This is just not even, it's just random. You can see the equity goes up a little bit. So now a 65% chance of winning or equity against this entire range, which represents 36%, the top 36% of hands. These three particular hands, over the long run, if they were to gamble against this range over and over again, they would win 2 out of every 3 times, essentially. So I'm not going to get into much more with pre-flop mode. There's just no time, really. So if you want to put in a range like we did, you're just going to go up here. You're going to illuminate whatever you want. So you could illuminate, something like whatever you like, just something like this, and then you just go up here, add new range, name it, and then you can do the pre-flop calculations as we did just there. Suit selection mode and pre-flop waiting mode. Let's talk about those real quick right now, and then we're going to go to post-flop mode. So pre-flop waiting mode. We'll use the creator's example to better illustrate what this means. So this guy, this particular range he's created is called 30% parentheses 37% coverage. So let's look at it. All right, so if we look, the weighting essentially, let's ignore the weighting for now. Okay, this is pretty close to what we just selected in that last example for 36. Um, the difference here is that some of the hands within this have been given a different weight than others. So if we look here, I've put my cursor over 9-7 suited. If you look at the very lower left-hand corner of this, it's been giving a weight of 0.5. So the normal weight, if you're ignoring pre-flop waiting mode, is 1. So this is being counted half as often as ones that aren't weighted. So this 9-9 here, 6 of 6 combo selected, it's not weighted anything. It's just 1.0. Um, whereas, the King Jack offsuit has a 0.5, King 10 off has 0.5, etc. These others aren't counted as often. So why this is called 30% and 37% coverage is because 37% of hands are represented, or the top 37.6% of hands is represented in the yellow here. But each of the ones that are weighted with a little red, which is indicated by this red mark, are counted half as often as the ones that aren't. So essentially, the range is skewed towards the more valuable hands, or the ones that aren't weighted. So it's a little bit more representative of someone who plays 30% of hands rather than 37%, because these weaker hands aren't going to show up nearly as often as these others due to the weighting we've done. So let's say we just want to pick out, I don't know, top 30% of hands, and let's just pretend we're playing someone who's really tight. And, they raise let's say they raise 8% of hands or something. So we could just give it extra weighting. Let's say when they raise, we'll just give a double weight to all these kind of premium looking hands. Ace King, all these guys, like this. These pairs, mid pairs, all the way up. So, and then we could save this as a range and apply it, post flop. We can compare a hand we have versus, this range with the fact that, when this particular player who plays, about 30% of hands but only raises 8, when they've raised pre-flop, we have to take into account that some of these other hands are going to show up sometimes, but more often than not, it's going to be these very premium upper left-hand corner hands. So we're going to give them a double weight, which basically is saying, okay, yeah, this guy may play some of these other hands, but we have enough information about, our history with him to specify it even further, to narrow it down even further, I guess, in a statistical sense, to where we can weight and count these twice and count these other ones half as often. So it's going to be very heavily weighted towards this end of the range. So if we were to save this range, go up here, save this, tight razor or whatever, like that, we'll save that range. We can then go over here to post flop mode, and then we can compare. Let's say we had it doesn't even matter what we have. We can compare a hand that we have given a flop versus that range with the weighting included. And we're going to do that in a minute here with a different example. Before we do that, we're going to look at suit selection real quick. Now this makes more sense post flop, because this program, has this post flop mode, which is really where most of the action takes place, which most of your analysis is going to take place. So suit selection, if you perceive that someone has a flush draw and maybe some other types of, combination draws or pairs with it, in the post-flop mode, there's a lot of ways to input that. This is one way to do it, if you want to specify it by suit. So if I want to just include hands that have hearts and clubs in them or something, or let's say, I choose these. Let's get out of this pre-flop weighting. Okay, so now there's no weighting going on, or else we would see that bar. So let's say we want all these combinations of cards that have hearts and spades in them. So, or rather, oops, I gotta go into suit selection. Okay, I'm sorry there. So we want to select all combinations with hearts and clubs. So we're going to exclude, suited diamonds, spades, and diamond offsuit. Um, so so if we say let's go to King Jack off. Okay, yeah. So when we've selected hearts and clubs here, it's going to include ones that have a heart or a club in them. So um, if we click down like 4-3, we're going to include this in this grouping. Um, so for suits, yeah, let's go to suit selection mode again. We'll do hearts, clubs only, and we'll go down this row. We'll keep those three in there too. It doesn't really matter. We'll just look at one. So 10 of 12 combinations of an ace-6 offer are selected, and the ones that aren't going to be selected are ones that have diamonds and spades. So those are the two that are going to be left out. They have to have a heart or a club in there. So that's basically all this is going to do. You can do this with anything you want. You can do this, you could be looking at something, all sixes or something, or all sevens, and you just want to make sure that if you want to, you can just make sure that if they're included in the post-flop calculation as part of this range that you selected for your opponent, they're not going to have anything but hearts and clubs in them. So that's how that works. So I'm going to pause this real quick and then we'll get to post-flop mode. Okay, everybody. So we're going to post-flop mode here now. Before we do, I'm just going to go over these little tools up here, these drop-down menus. So you can save any image as a PNG file, a PNG, so any range you want. You would just save this range. If you wanted hand grid, we just say 80%. Because for this example, we're going to take to the post-flop mode. We're going to be in the limit hold'em heads-up scenario, and we're going to pretend that our opponent, when he's not in the big blind, when he's in the small blind or he's first to act, he's going to be raising 80% of hands. So we can just look down at that. I mean, it's not going to be anything special. So yeah, you can, I guess, put these on message boards, email them and stuff. So this one's not particularly indicative of much, but it's just illustrative of you can do that. So yeah, so toggle output, since we're still in pre-flop mode, that's how you're gonna be able to see, calculations that you've made. There's the one we made before. So I'll just clear those out. But so yeah, toggle output, that you can just hit F2 as well. These are all the shorthanded ways to do these options here. You can save any files. Let's see, we'll save this here. It's a .combo file, so we just save this as example, and save that down there. You can pull it in, I guess, and you clear all this rather, and then you just reopen it, I'd say. Yeah, and then if you just want to open it on its own, you just double click it. It'll open in a separate Combonator. My computer's lagging a little bit because of the recording software, but you can open up a whole other one. So toggle output, edit, undo, redo, show grid lines. I like the way that looked. There's a select external equity calculator. That's if you want to take this to, I guess this Equilab or Poker Stove slide. I don't really know exactly. This has a built-in equity calculator, so I don't really know about that too much. If you want to use it, I guess. Don't warn when wiping analysis. Saved range double click replaces grid. Yeah, I guess over here if we have a range, we just want to double click it. If we check that, it'll just replace whatever we have out here. Show tips turned off. Self-explanatory. Show grid lines. So just these dark lines. Tools, export to equity calculator. You can take any range. You can do range versus range. We already can do that in this program, so it's not really necessary, I don't think, unless you want to take it. I guess you might have reasons for doing that. This is the Pro Edition, so if you purchase it, you can put your license code in here, and there's mine. And no, let's go to post-flop mode. So I hope everyone has a decent idea of pre-flop mode so far. Basically you're just setting up ranges, and you're not putting in a particular hand yet, but you're going to get a better idea of what portions of all of the Texas Hold'em hands you could be dealt. What, when they're grouped by ranking, what that looks like, and what portions of a range are going to look like. We can keep narrowing it down further and further, but here we're just like taking any part of every hand possible, every combination of Hold'em hand. We're just going to break that up into basically a percentage of hands that someone's playing, and then we'll go to post-flop mode, and we'll just go from there. So I think we should just do that right now. So in post-flop mode, what you're going to be doing here, you're going to have all these little groups you can create. So choose a colored group above to get started. We're not going to do that yet. What I've set up here is just a mock flop, and I'm giving us a hand already. We have 10 of hearts, 7 of hearts. So before we get into the example hand, I'm going to go into just real quick how to input stuff here real fast. So if you want to input a board, again, this may be a hand that you can, if you're using Poker Tracker, you can bring a hand history over. You can right click it in there and just right click in here and paste it, or you can put it on the clipboard rather, and then paste from the clipboard if you've taken a hand history from Hold'em Manager. If you're just manually inputting it, so if we want to do like a rainbow board of, let's say 7, 8, 9, you just do 7, 8, 9 R. It'll randomly select a rainbow of 7, 8, 9 for the flop. If we want to do 7, 8, 9, with 2 to a suit, we could do 7, 8, 9 two-tone, 2T, and then it'll give us a two-tone. So 7 of diamonds, 8 of diamonds, 9 of spades. Again, you can just manually put in like we've had what we had. So that's what we had before. So that's just a way to enter that. Hero cards, self-explanatory. So you can get cards from clipboard or Poker Tracker here. So obviously I don't have Poker Tracker with me or on this computer, so I'm not going to be using that to input hand history. But if you have it and up and running, that should be pretty simple. Just click Get Cards From. We go to Poker Tracker, and then I think you can just pull up Poker Tracker and specify what you're looking for. Put it on the clipboard, and then from the clipboard you can put it into here. Same would go for hero cards, I'm guessing. I know that actually, so just don't have Poker Tracker with me. Just not sure what's going on with the bottom there. So we're looking. This is the output like thus far. So we have a board of King of Hearts, 6 of diamonds, 8 of spades. We have 10 of hearts, 7 of hearts. So our equity versus the top 79.2% of hands, which is what we're assuming our opponent is playing 80% of hands in a heads-up game, or raising 80% of hands pre-flop in a limit Hold'em heads-up game. So we have about a 40% or 39.25% chance of winning versus this entire range on this flop. There's a lot of caveats to that. Kind of like just put an asterisk by that, but for all intents and purposes, okay, well I guess it's 38.61. It was doing calculations still down here, but if we went all in on this board against this entire range, a billion times, we would lose decent amount of money. We would lose 12 cents on every dollar. So, or more than that, we'd be putting in half. We'd be losing quite a bit. Obviously, it would be not quite a 2-to-1 underdog, but close to that. So that's based against this entire range. I'm going to pause this real quick. I'll be right back. I'm going to take a quick break. Alright everybody, so we're going to get down into these groups here in a second. I'm just going to go over the tabs up here that would be good to explain now. We'll come back to some of the others. This calculator, we'll talk about it at the end. This is one of the newer features. If we have time we can get into this, but it has instructions, so it's fairly self-explanatory. We may not get fully into that, but we'll look at it again. History is just all the stuff that we've done over here. So any change that we've made is going to be saved over here as kind of an audit. So if you want to go back to you know changes that you've made, you can do that. So let's see, like file is open. We could go back to like the original 80% file in the preflop mode. You can just basically hop back to any. We've only arranged it a few times. Not a whole lot of history here, but um, we go back to the very beginning there, and that would be where we'd go. So that's what history does. It just kind of takes you through what you've done already. Tools, export range. We haven't grouped anything yet out of the range we've selected yet, but once we've done that, you can export that to an equity calculator. And maybe once you have grouped, let's say after the flop action, you can assume some, once your opponent has made a decision, if he continues in the hand, you can narrow this range down so you can select hands out of this, and those would be grouped. Then you can set the range to that, and it will exclude the rest. There's other ways of doing that as well, which we'll get into that will involve these tabs down here. Values, so we've out of these 79.2% of all hands, this is the frequency out of all the combinations that they'll make a pair. 51% of the time, this range of hands is going to make a pair on this board. It's going to have a high card every time. It's going to be a set 2% of the time, two pair 6% of the time, over pair to second pair, 24% of the time, etc. This cumulative button, when it's clicked, it's going to include all of these hand specifications, as that, including that and all the hands better than it. So if we don't have that clicked, out of this complete range, there's going to be a two pair 3% of the time, set 1% of the time, pair 41% of the time, etc. So high card 55% of the time. If we include better, though, it's always going to be a high card or better. Obviously, you can have a pair or better 45% of the time. So a pair alone 41% of the time. But if you include these other two, those are the ones that would be added to it in the cumulative. It'll go up to 45. And then obviously, all of this here will be included with high card in cumulative because it's better than high card. And that's out of this entire range. So we haven't changed that range yet. So combinations, this is just listing every single combination out of all of this. So like, queen 5, let's say queen 4. It's how many queen 4s are there? I'll have it down here somewhere. Well, anyways, I can't find it. It's in there somewhere. So yeah, ignore dead. Oh, sorry. Anyways, it's just showing you all the different combinations there are of those hands. So that's that. Charts. This is just showing. This will get into more. This will be better once we group some of these. And then this is just where we were to start. So let's say that we have 10-7 of hearts here, and we've been raised by someone who plays 80% of hands in the limit hold'em game. So that's going to include when they're in the big blind and the small blind. So let's say that they've raised, we've called, flop comes king 6 8, so we flopped a gutter, sort of an overcard to the sixes and eights, gut shot, backdoor flush draw. So all that's happened, and our opponent's aggressive and plays a lot of hands. He's continuation betting, let's say 95% of the time. This is a limit hold'em heads up game. So, we can, let's say that he bets and then we raise, and then he decides to call that. We have to decide what kind of hands are going to be in that range. So we can group things within this 80% of hands he's playing to fit the mold of this particular circumstance. So there's going to be these 5 different tabs: absolute, relative, range percentage versus hero, and equity. These are all ways of basically regrouping this 79.2% of hands however we'd like to. So this reset panels is just going to change everything in each of these tabs. So any adjustment we make, we can reset panels. It's going to reset everything. So for group 1, we're going to do this absolute tab. So out of all of these hands, let's say that we think he'll call with any, let's just for the sake of showing what absolute does, let's say that he's only going to call our check raise with high card, ace, or better with any flush draw or any straight draw to go with it. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, so all these red cards fit this description. They're going to be high card, ace, any kicker, or better. So obviously pocket aces and sets and everything else are going to be included in that. So these are the hands, and the hands that we've grouped represent 61% of out of all of the hands that we had grouped out of the 79.2, 61% are represented by high card, ace, or better with any sort of straight or flush draws to go with it. Oops. I'm going to pause real quick. Be right back. Okay, everybody, sorry about that. Having a little bit of issues with this recording software, and I don't know, it's kind of slowing everything up, which is pretty standard for the recording software. Anyways, so just for argument's sake, okay, this absolute tab, what this is going to do is we're going to put in a value here. I've selected, you can choose anything. You can select high card, ace high, specifically, any kicker or better, okay? Absolutely better. Not relative to the board texture, absolutely better than ace high. Okay, so you could have pocket, an overpair of pocket aces would fit into this, for example. So flush draws, any straight draws. So here, you can, if someone had 3 to a flush, or there were two to a suit out, you could enter in flush draw. If they had 3 to a flush, or 3 or 4 to a flush, we'd use this one. We're not going to include that here. So clear this. So what we're going to do, we're going to try to get an equity here. So we'll calculate this right now. So we've done high card, ace, any kicker or better. So it's going to include aces, ace king suited, ace jack, any sets, any other pairs, bottom pair, bottom kicker type of thing. So against this ace high or better group, 10-7 of hearts has about 31.84% equity, which is indicated right here. So that's the first way you can group things. For the sake of keeping it simple, when we moved on to these next tabs, I'm going to remove anything that I did prior to that. So this absolute here is just giving us an idea. Let's say in that example we were talking about, we check raise on this board with a 10-7 of hearts on the king of hearts, 6 of diamonds, 8 of spades board. And let's just say for argument's sake, he's only going to call with ace highs and better. That's not true necessarily, but this is how we would stand against that range of hands if that's what we put him on. So that being said, it's not the worst thing in the world. We could almost say, clear this out up here, and we could just say any pair, any kicker, or better. see what that looks like here. So here we've got 29.35% equity, and just it'll fill in according to what we ask it. So that's just another way of looking at things. So that's not what I wanted. Clear that. Whatever. Don't worry about that. Just going to try to show the prior example again, but that's okay. So absolute, you're just going to be entering in these things, and we'll leave this in here just for now. So any pair. So for group 2, though, we're going to use this relative tab. So when you're in these tabs, so let's go back to group 1 here. Say we're in group 1. We can rename this group pair or better, anything we want. So we can right-click here and also weight it however we want. We can give any particular hand. We can count it, weight it lower by using that scale, all based on 1. 0.5 being half weight, 2 being double weight. So we can name this, pair or better. We'll just call it POB. So then we'll move over to tab 2, or group 2, and we're going to use this relative tab. So this relative tab is pretty similar to the absolute tab, except that it's going to keep in mind what's out here a little bit more specifically, and it's going to be comparing it to this. It's going to be relative to the board, not relative to the other opponent's hand necessarily. So hand value, these are all things compared to this board. So let's say any hand that is second pair or better, and we'll ignore flush draws again. And then here, since this is all group 1 that's in red, this will come up as green. We want to overwrite anything that may be dually included in both of these, so we can see exactly what group 2 will look like here. So we'll overwrite. This is still doing something down here. I don't really know what. We'll click go, and it overwrites it. And just named it second pair plus, and we can see the equity versus that. Versus group 2, hero equity is about 25, versus group 1 it's about 38.31. So that's just a way to kind of break it down even further, if you'd like to. So we can change that however we want. We can reset the panels. That'll reset everything. We do undo that last one. We can just do second pair. We can override, if anything, just second pair, not second pair or better. And it's going to show us all the second pairs there are versus our 10-7. Group 2 doesn't really, our equity is still about 28, 29, so it's just another way of looking at it. If we put the man on second pair that we're playing, we got one over, a gut shot, and some backdoor equity in straights and hearts draws. So that's just another way of comparing it specifically to what we might put him on. Again, in the first example, we were putting him on ace high or better. So that was, since we overwrote that, we have to go back. Oops. That was. So we'll undo that. Go back to group 1, which was any pair, but we can change that back to any high card, ace or better. So that includes all those. And our equity is about 35% over, ace highs or better. So that might be a little bit more telling. And again, you can really narrow these analyses down to be a lot more specific. But I just wanted to demonstrate how you use each of these. So for this third group here, we're going to do this range percentage. So and we'll do showdown equity, which is going to take into account drawing equity rather than just the absolute value of a hand at that moment in time. I guess this incorporates drawing equity a little bit more than absolute hand value does. So if we wanted to look at the top, let's say 50% of this entire range, we want to compare that to our 10-7. Again, we can override anything here. and then we just click go. Okay, well, this thing's still working down here. Okay, so I need to hit it one more time. There we go. So this group 3 is top 50% of complete range. So if we look at the equity of about 32% equity over the top 50% of this range, um, you know, um, let's just, how the range percentage works. We could do bottom 50 as well. So undo that real quick. We can just do this. Give us that, and then we can see that um, against grouped group 3, the bottom 50%, we have um, a lot better equity. Hero equity 49.44 against group 3, which is what we're in right here. For some reason, this didn't update. Let's see. 3 hero equity 49.44. So this is just lagging. That should have updated. Anyways, so that's how range percentage works. So you can take this entire range. We've selected 79.2% of hands, the bottom 50% of that, versus the 10-7. And the hero has about a exact coin toss with it. So then move to group 4. And we'll do versus hero. So just clear all this. And we can do any hands that are equal or better than a 10-7 of hearts. We'll just add only now there's nothing out there. So, these are all the hands that in absolute value sense are better than 10 high. The draws that it has, all these pink ones, 10 high has an edge over. So, but against this entire purple range, you can see hero's equity is about 33.8%. Against the pink range or the ungrouped range, 76.3. We'll just clear that out. And equity, we can select combinations with equity versus hero between, and again, this could be what we put our opponent on, or this could be what we're holding. So we can look at, in terms of our range versus a particular hand they hold, or we can look at it in terms of a particular hand we hold versus their range. So here, we just say, this is kind of specific. We could just say, if they called, let's say in our 10-8 example, we check raise on the flop of king, check raise the board, sorry, 10-7 example. We check raise the board of king of hearts, 6 of diamonds, 8 of spades, and we get called. We could just roughly say, anything, 65, he's going to call with anything to say it from the 40% of his range up to the 100, the best part of his range here. You can just see what that looks like. And again, it's going to be most of the hands, and we can see what the equity is against it. I don't want to make these overcomplicated, but again, you can alter the ranges as the hand progresses and exclude things, and then, basically analyze from there. Make your analysis from there. You're starting out with a broad range. Action takes place on the flop. Then you may add and reduce cards as you please according to what they did. And then you can make an analysis from there in terms of what you should do. So that's how that last tab would work. Anytime you're starting with something like this, high card, ace high or better, absolute. And then let's say we want to go all the way down to this equity and just do 20 to 45. You want to overwrite and see which ones. Sorry, we want to make those purple, so we get to overwrite the bottom part of these. These are like the hands that would hold 20 to 45% equity versus the 10-7. So it would obviously be like the worst hands: 10-5 off, 9-5 off, 7-5 off. All hands that we have beaten with a 10 high. basically is what would fit into there. I'm going to pause this really fast, and I'll be right back. Alright everybody, I'm just going to go into some of these tabs up here I didn't really get a chance to mention. So, basically this is here, this is just, I've kind of cleared everything. We're in group 7. These are all just kind of arbitrary, but we're using group 7 by itself. I should just put it at 1. We're in 7, which doesn't matter. We're only looking at 7. None of these others have anything going on inside of them. We're just in 7. So what I've done again is just this ace high or better. Versus our 10-7 on this flop, and this is just like a bar graph representation of, what percentage of that total range would be ace high or better. You can do a bar chart if you want. This is just showing the breakdown of all the hands. So there's that. This shows all the combinations of hands in the complete range. We could look at grouped. It's going to take, all the ace high or betters and just show us all the different combinations of that hand. With group 7 rather. I guess grouped is group 7 because there's only one group here. So that's just going to show us all the combinations there. Charts of values. This is, again, we've already talked about this complete range. Just going to show, if the cumulative is going to show or better. If that's unclicked, it's going to show what portion of this range makes a pair, makes two pair, makes high card, etc. So, if you do cumulative, everything's going to, high card is going to be a high card every time, because it's going to be high card or better. So it's going to be a high card. So, it's going to be a pair, it's just going to be added, these are going to be added. The high card will be added to this, because anything above high card is included in the cumulative format. So, set the, we just change the entire range to group 7, just remove all that other stuff. Now we can compare make an analysis from there. If we just rule out everything else that isn't ace high or better, then we can make the analysis from there. So let's see. Let's do it again. Yeah, but this was all. So you can just set it to all the hands in either way, and just you can do an analysis from there to where we could do well, since this is ungrouped, let's do grouped. Oops. So grouped, set, just do these purples here, and then we could do any pair of eights or better. We can compare that to our hands now, and I'll pull that up now that we've already excluded these things that we have ruled out as being part of his range. After he calls on the flop, our check raise essentially. Just for example's sake, so clear that. Just undo all that. Just get that back to where it was. So exporting range, you can export these to these equity calculators there. It's just history, so you can go back to stuff we've done. Calculator here. So draw equity. Perform auto selection in group 1 to equal or better than hero's hand. This formula will tell you how much of hero's showdown equity comes from improvement. So group 1 pair. So or better, so pair of eights or better. This formula will tell you how much of the hero's showdown equity comes from improvement. So this has, This is how many combos are in group 1, pair of 8s or better. Combos in complete range, 842. Hero equity versus specified group, 25%. Hero equity versus complete range, 39. So fraction of equity from improvement as a percentage is 20%. So, this is just telling you in general, okay, like 10-7, most of our equity is coming from the fact that we can make a gut shot, we can make backdoor flush, we can get open-ended with a 9 on the turn. So, obviously, if we're up against a pair of 8s, we're drawing it at 10. So this just shows the percentage of all of our equity that's coming from our drawing percentage. I mean, 10 high is only going to have absolute equity over these like 9 high hands and weak 10s and stuff like that. So, and these other low hands. So that we looked at earlier. So that's just basically what that's looking at there. Semi-bluff calculator. Enter in the hands that will call the bet as a group. 1. All ungrouped combos are considered hands that will fold. Enter in the pot size and the cost to bet in either dollar or bets, and the output will show the value of the bet. Considering your fold equity and equity when called. Assume no future action, i.e. future bluff, value, or implied odds. So it works most accurately when shoving and no limit. So we could say the pot is 10 and we're betting 4. We're betting 4 to game 7. So, if we believe that pair of 8s or better are going to call here, and we semi-bluff with this 10-7, so the cost of bet, so we're betting 4 into a 10, a pot of 10, and the output is a 7, so that's going to take into account fold equity and equity when called. So assume no future action, or it assumes no future action, future bluff value, or implied odds, so it works most accurately when shoving. So this might not be this might not be very overwhelmingly applicable to what we're looking at here, but essentially, even so, the 10-7 here, betting is a lot better than calling because of the fold equity we gain from doing so. But this is saying that it's going to take into account when shoving more often than not. So, I guess this is essentially saying, when you don't have a whole lot of, actual equity that isn't coming from draws at the moment of a bet, this is going to show you how valuable a bet is because of the fold equity that you gain, essentially. So, also so one more second, I'm just reading this right here. Show the value of the bet considering your fold equity and equity when called. So yeah, this is going to take into account all the time the money you win when they fold and the times you're going to beat a pair of 8s, either by hitting your gut shot or hitting runner or hitting your 10, etc. So anyways, that's the calculator there. History, tools, values, combos, charts, post flop, pre flop. We can clear all this, reset all that. We can go back to pre flop mode. And there's our 80%. We can just clear that, and you can just start a fresh hand right there. So I'm sorry about this calculator. I was just trying to. I'd read over it a couple of times. I didn't quite get the gist of it, I guess, till now. But hopefully, it helps everyone understand it a bit better. And I guess I'll close the video out there. And like I said, you can go to YouTube, type in Combonator. The creator has several videos that are quite helpful, and his website, Combonator.com. Just look it up on Google. He has some more videos in his blog about some updates. So hope that's helpful to everyone, and everybody take care. Okay, bye.
Hey there, everybody. I just wanted to go over this draw equity tab again, along with the semi-bluff shove calculator, but mainly the draw equity. I misexplained it, and let's just go over it properly here. So what I did in the main video for group 1, I put absolute pair of 8s or better when I was looking at the draw equity tab, and that gave us this bogus reading of 20.9% or 20.19. What we really were supposed to do, which it explains to us up here in this box, was go over to versus hero. There's two. You can do equal or better than hero's hand or equal or worse than hero's hand. So I was supposed to go down here to versus hero and then click go. So that would pull up all of the hands that we are drawing against out of the entire range here. So everything in red we're behind. Everything that's light pink and light green we have beat on the flop. So basically all these readings over here are going to go into this math problem on the bottom that's going to show us the fraction of the total equity that comes from the drawing potential of our hand. So in this particular instance, 77.62% of our equity against the entire range comes from our drawing equity against everything in red. So just to say one more time, we have 0.39 equity against everything here. Light green, pink, red. We have 0.39 against all of that combined. Against just red, we have a 0.34 equity. Now, there are 744 out of 839 combinations that fit into group 1, which we have 0.34 equity against. So we do a division problem here to weight basically this equity that we have against group 1. After we do that, you divide it by the total equity against all of the group, multiply by 100, and we get the fraction of equity from improvement as a percentage. So 77.62 of the equity that we have against all of this is going to come from our drawing potential against all the hands that have us beat. So semi-bluff shove calculator, let's just read this box one more time. Enter in the hands that will call the bet as group 1. All ungrouped combinations are considered hands that will fold. Enter in the pot size and the cost to bet in either money or bets, and the output will show the value of the bet considering your fold equity and equity when called. This assumes no future action, that is, future bluff value or implied odds. So works most accurately when shoving in no limit hold'em. So let's just clear this and let's go back to group 1 and let's put go back to the absolute tab and we'll put we need to put into group 1 all hands that will call the bet. So let's say that for argument's sake any pair of 8s with a queen kicker or better will call a shove on the flop. Let's just say. So that'll pull up all those hands. Okay, so now that we've done that, so enter in the pot size and the cost to bet. So let's say that the pot has, I don't know, say $25 in it, and let's say that it's going to cost us, I don't know, 15 bets to get all in, for example. So if we did that and we look down, I'm not going to go into the equation, it's too long. It looks pretty hard to explain as well, but essentially for every 15 that we bet when the pot is 25, the value of that bet of 15 is 18.48 in terms of the fact that we've decided that any pair of queens with an 8 kicker will call when we go all in. Anything else will fold to a shove. So everything that isn't illuminated here, everything that's not red is going to fold.